This is Reverse Engineered.
Hey everyone, my name is John Penland, and Reverse Engineered is brought to you by Kinsta, a premium managed hosting provider. In today's episode, I'm talking with Joe Howard, founder and CEO of WP Buffs. Joe, welcome to Reverse Engineered.
Thank you for having me, John. I'm excited to be on the podcast. When we jumped on recording here, I saw you're using Riverside, and I was like, oh, this is going to be a good podcast. I'm excited
That's
for this.
right. That's right. Cutting no corners. So to get us started, can you introduce yourself to our listeners?
Sure. My name is Joe Howard. I am the founder and CEO of WP Buffs. That's how most people know about me in the WordPress space. So we do 24/7 website management, both for direct clients, small businesses, entrepreneurs, startups that run their own WordPress website, but also white label partners. So agencies, freelancers, WordPress professionals, some other larger WordPress companies, they can work with us to provide 24/7 support to their WordPress clients through our support program, white label support program. And so, that's most of what I do. I also dabble a little bit in WP MRR. So that's kind of the more agency and freelancer side of things, where we do a annual summit and we do a podcast and stuff over there. So that's a lot of fun as well.
Yeah. So I do want to take a moment and let you dig a little bit more into what it is that WP Buffs does, because a lot of our conversation today is going to center around WP Buffs. So you mentioned that WP Buffs provides maintenance on behalf of agencies, sometimes in a white label capacity, but then also just directly to folks. So talk to us a little bit. If I'm completely unfamiliar with WP Buffs and you say WordPress maintenance, what does that mean practically speaking? Because different people might mean different things with those words.
Yeah, definitely. We've kind of shifted our language a little bit in terms of what we do.
Sure.
When the business started, we were talking more about website maintenance, and now we talk a little bit more about website management. We do maintenance tasks, but a lot of times for me, the maintenance is the more automated tasks, handling backups, that kind of thing. And we do those on all of our plans, and definitely included in our lower level plans, but we do a lot of proactive work as well, helping people with all of the website edits they need, performance optimization, security optimization, all sorts of advanced work as well for WooCommerce sites or membership sites. So we've kind of shifted more into the language of like website management, 24/7 website management. And we think that's kind of just, it sounds more premium because it is kind of more premium. That's what we're offering, a more premium service. But in terms of just like what we do as a company, it's really just a subscription service for folks. So I'm sure every WordPress professional out there who's listening has also has their own WordPress website or their own collection of WordPress sites. And you remember what it was like to get started with WordPress, way back in the day. Oh, okay, I launched my site. Okay, I did that, but now I have to handle all the updates and all the compatibility between the plugins and themes and PHP version I'm running. I just want to try PHP 8. Is all my stuff going to
Right, is everything going to break?
8?
Right.
Yeah, and so for our direct customers, that's something, we pretty much take the headache away from folks and allow them to, our goal is to help people grow digitally through managing their website. So we handle all the WordPress stuff. Okay, now you're freed up to do more of what you want to do. Maybe you want to focus on more sales or marketing or SEO or growing your audience or growing your community or growing your sales through your e-commerce shop. So that's really the focus of what we do.
Yeah, and I think something that would be valuable, a lot of folks who listen to Reverse Engineered are going to be folks who are familiar with Kinsta. And so they may hear a lot of what you've talked about and not have a clear picture of what is different between the service you might get from a premium hosting provider like Kinsta and a website management company like WP Buffs. So can you help differentiate a little bit there? I mean, I could do it, but I'd like to hear kind of your take on what's that relationship between the hosting provider, the website management company, in this case WP Buffs, and then the website owner.
Yeah, we have a great blog post up about this because we've gotten this question so much. We're like, okay, we have to write a blog post about it because it's easier just to shoot someone a link than explain this, 100 different times. But you're totally right. I actually want to give a shout out to Kinsta because when we were getting started, Kinsta's always been one of those companies that I've really looked up to in terms of we're a bootstrapped or revenue funded company, as is Kinsta.
Yep.
And man, look where Kinsta is like battling against all the other big hosts out there and like really like outperforming a lot of them in a lot of senses. And so that's really motivation for me to want to do some of that same work and reach some of those same levels. But when we were kind of getting started and I was looking at Kinsta, I've worked with partnered with Kinsta for a long time on a lot of different stuff, and Kinsta was one of the first people who I was thinking like, should we host websites at WP Buffs?
Yeah.
And then I thought, because like I was working directly with Kinsta and talking with them folks over Kinsta, I was like, they're so good at hosting, like we should like kind of handle everything outside of hosting, or we should focus on the WordPress side of things more purely and allow people like Kinsta to focus on how to make the hosting environment and the hosting experience exceptional. Because like everybody who's listening who knows Kinsta is like, Kinsta's great at all this stuff. Like, why would you try to recreate what Kinsta does? Like, they already do it so well. And I couldn't disagree with that. So that's where my distinction between the two comes in. And actually where I think there's a big advantage. Kinsta does like fully managed WordPress hosting. I have this idea in my head of like fully managed WordPress.
Yes, there you go.
And that's where like our white label program potentially with like even like a hosting company or just a freelancer or an agency, like you can fully manage everything, not just the hosting side of things, but the WordPress side of things. And that's, I think, where people get a lot of value out of that, because everyone wants a great host.
Yeah.
Everyone also needs help with, okay, I need like to make all these updates to my website. I need to like be posting my blog content regularly, but I don't want to like format it every time. Okay, I have to. Where do I find this thing in the dashboard? Everybody's had that experience of like, where do I change this thing in the dashboard? You're looking for it for like 45 minutes, and it's like, finally I found it. Well, our engineers know where it is. We can do it fast. So, I think at the end of the day, like that is a really cool idea, and so that's to me that's the distinction between like what a hosting company supports and then what a company like WP Buffs can come in and supplement some of that support. Honestly, in some of the places that Kinsta probably a hosting company doesn't want to play in, like, can you help me edit my WordPress site?
Correct.
You're like, no, like we handle hosting. Not that we don't want to, but it's just like not our area. So we can help with that.
Yeah. No, I think that was a perfect explanation, and I really like the distinction you made there between managed WordPress hosting and managed WordPress, right? That's something that I've talked about a lot internally. I really prefer to say managed hosting for WordPress. Now that, marketing speak, that's a little bit wordier. It doesn't flow as nicely. So we go with managed WordPress hosting. But managed hosting for WordPress is a more accurate description of what managed WordPress hosts are providing. We are really managing the hosting environment. And I could spend a really long time talking about why that makes sense. And I do think that companies like WP Buffs can be a very valuable service provider in that ecosystem, particularly because WordPress does attract users who, maybe they don't want to deal with that stuff because they don't have the technical skill set, or maybe they just don't want to deal with it because they want to focus on their business, right? Like maybe they do have the technical skill set and they're like, I just don't want to have to deal with this. I could, but I'd rather have somebody else do it for me. So I do see a lot of just a good relationship between somebody like WP Buffs and somebody like Kinsta, where when we have a customer who's asking our support team to step outside what we're really there to do, we can go, hey, Joe Howard over at WP Buffs, this guy is exactly right who you need for this sort of service that goes above and beyond, the hosting itself. So I agree with everything you said there about that relationship and the value you guys can add in that relationship. So, all right. So I want to go back to WP Buffs though. What is the origin story? How did WP Buffs come to be?
Yeah, we'll get into the reverse engineering.
That's
part
right.
Of the podcast.
Yeah.
So I was like most folks in the WordPress space. 5-6 years ago, I was a WordPress freelancer. I was working a full-time gig, and then kind of 9 to 5 working that, and then more 5 to 9 I was freelancing. I was building websites, mostly building websites. I don't even know really what I would call myself. Like I was the freelancer who like I'm not like a super strong designer or a super strong developer, but like I can put a WordPress website together. I can throw a theme in there. I can work with a theme, maybe a little bit of HTML and CSS, like make it like a little bit feel more custom, but it's really just like a themed website, pretty straightforward. I wasn't doing $100,000 websites. I was doing like $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 sites. And so and I was just kind of introducing myself to the WordPress community, like getting to know folks. I remember when I discovered there's like a huge community behind this, I was like, oh, this is awesome. Like I want to do more WordPress stuff and maybe want to go more like full time into WordPress instead of the job I was working, which I had not very much love for. And I had a lot of challenges like growing and scaling that business model. I honestly like just wasn't very good at kind of like juggling all the tasks it takes to like find new clients and build their website and like manage multiple projects at once. And so I kind of stumbled upon these other businesses around WordPress that were doing more maintenance work and ongoing support. And these were companies like WP Site Care and Maintain and Valet, although I think they may have been like WP Valet back then, but now they're Valet.io. But they were all doing this maintenance work. And I remember seeing these companies and being like, oh, like subscription WordPress
recurring
services.
revenue,
Yeah, and I didn't even know the terminology, like monthly. I didn't even know what MRR was, like monthly recurring revenue. And definitely didn't know what like lifetime value or like churn was. Like I didn't know any of this terminology, but I remember seeing like they get paid every month to do like ongoing support tasks. That sounds like pretty systemizable. Also, they've kind of already proven the business model to me. Obviously, I have to like be able to do this, and I have to prove myself that I can do that. But these companies are clearly like live companies doing this work and have grown to a certain size. So like, okay, like that to me, that was a little bit of like, I didn't have to like prove if like subscription services like was a thing. Like if people pay them for this, why wouldn't they pay me for this? So that's where WP Buffs came from. The domain itself was actually, I bought WPBuffs.com domain originally because I wanted to create an educational site. And then it was just kind of like laying around for a year. I built out a few things, but it never really got anywhere. I'm sure if you go back to Wayback Machine, like you can find some old like crappy WP Buff site, but it never really like got off the ground. And then I wanted to start this new company, and I was like, oh, I already have this domain. WP Buffs is cool because I can like it can be like a cool like it can be a double meaning for like it's like a history buff, like very educated in a certain area, WP Buffs, but I can also like have a little like cartoon strong guy for it. So like, okay, that seems to make sense in my head for some reason, and it's fun. So let's go for it. And so, that was WP Buffs. And that was, 5 or so years ago now, 5.5 years ago.
Okay. So you've come up with the idea, been proven by looking at other folks in the space who are doing similar things. You're starting to build this company. Are there certain metrics that you paid really close attention to, either early on or even coming up to today, to try and metrics that you felt would indicate, the health or the growth potential of the business over time? What are the things you kind of kept your eye on in those early days?
The easy answer is nothing serious.
Okay, sure.
If I'm being honest, I was really focused on getting new customers.
Okay, sure.
Because I didn't really know how to do that. My background's kind of in content marketing and digital marketing, so I feel like I'm actually pretty good in that area, but I didn't know how to do it for this specific business. And to me, I knew that was going to be a challenge, not just like how to get like 1 or 2 new customers, but like how do I create kind of this self-feeding system that regularly gets me new clients, right? Because you can like go and pay for ads and get clients potentially, but then you have to like keep paying for ads every month. I wanted to go a different route, and I wanted something a little bit more organic, like something a little bit more like paying for customers. It doesn't like exactly like work with how I like personally want to get customers. Like I want to help educate people. I want to help people. I want to be a positive, potentially like influence in their life, or have my company be a positive influence in their life. And then after I've provided value to them, they'll come, and if they need that help, they can come and, hey, we offer these things as well. And so early days, I was very much focused on like writing content and trying to get the kind of content machine working, driving traffic. That was that continues today to be our biggest driver of traffic and leads and new direct customers or new direct clients, new direct white label partners, is content and organic search. So and that was what I was definitely focused on then. It's just like I was writing a lot of content, a lot of pretty bad content, if I'm being honest. But my mentality has always been like, you just got to start somewhere, and you can always improve. So try it out to get on the hamster wheel and run, and maybe the hamster wheel will get move a little bit forward. So yeah, that was the big focus in the early days. I think there's even more of a lesson there because I went to MicroConf, which is like a conference for it's really around like small revenue funded companies that traditionally have not raised like VC or angel funding. It's kind of like WP Buffs or like Kinsta. So I learned there probably like 2 years into running WP Buffs. I learned what like lifetime value was, and I learned what like revenue churn versus user churn was, and then what's net negative churn? That sounds cool. What's my ARPU? What's my average revenue per customer? Which of course I laughed at like everybody else. The first time I heard that metric, but I didn't really know what any of those metrics were until about 2 years into running WP Buffs, and I think there actually was some value in that because I think if you have 10 customers. Like when I did in the early days, if like 2 customers leave 1 month, it's like 20% user churn. Like, oh my God, everything's on fire. But like, not really, because like the numbers are not statistically, like you don't have enough clients or customers to be that number to be statistically significant or not. So I've actually on my podcast talked about a lot of these numbers, and I've said like early days, like just focus on like getting new customers, but also just like talking with your audience and like getting feedback and like getting to know the people who are buying from you so that you can like eventually sell to them. But it's even more than that. It's just like in order to sell to people, you have to gain their trust. In order to gain their trust, you have to like know them. You have to like be friends with them. You have to have relationships with them. So that's what I really try to focus on in the early days. And then when you have like 50 clients or something, then you can start looking at like what's the lifetime value and how do I increase that by releasing new features, or for us like new care plans, or how do I upsell people. Upsell sounds kind of like a dirty word. How do I get more expansion revenue? See, now we're using more friendly language. How do I get people to upgrade or get white label partners to add new sites? Well, you can really focus on that, I think, once you have a good foundation. And for me, like having that foundation of like organic traffic continuing to send us new customers month after month after month, it almost took a lot of stress off so I could focus on those other parts. And actually, if I'm being honest, like now the like low churn and the expansion revenue is like actually one of the biggest growth factors of our business. Organic traffic still sends us a lot of new customers, but in terms of existing client growth, that's a huge growth area for us. So yeah, I focused on those like more metrics related things a little bit later on. We still do today, but more in broader strokes. Yeah. So something that struck me, one of the things you said early on there is that as you were getting started, one of the things you put a lot of effort into was content. And then something else that you mentioned, which I think goes hand in hand with a focus on content, is this idea of early on talking to your audience, trying to get feedback from your customers, right? So trying to engage with customers and potential customers and have a conversation. The thing that I am struck by when I hear that is I imagine, a Joe Howard who has 10 customers or who has maybe fewer, starting out, maybe no customers, right? There has to be a factor of fear, right? Like there has to be a factor of, I'm going to put myself out there as this, maintenance or management company, and I'm not actually doing it yet, right? So did you struggle with any of that fear early on, or sort of that imposter syndrome it sometimes is referred to as? Like, did you struggle with any of that early on, and how did you wrestle through it, I guess? I still struggle with some of that stuff, man. I mean, some weeks are good, some weeks are not good. Some weeks I am the man, and some weeks I really suck a lot and need to get better. So that's a continued, I think, journey for me and a lot of people. But I'm going to tell you the truth. When we sold our first care plan, I had no operations in place, and I've told this at a few different places before, but. That's like awesome. Literally someone clicked and again, like our old websites, it's so funny thinking back, like someone came to our website, read some stuff and then were like, they're going to try this? Like, okay. They clicked like a PayPal button and
Sure.
on the website embedded and like
Sure.
paid us in PayPal. And I was like, oh my God, someone paid us.
Right.
This is amazing. Someone paid me money. Someone sent me money online. I have money from this. All right, like, cool. That's it, right? Oh, like I have to figure out how to actually do this now.
Yeah,
so I actually
absolutely.
kind of still remember that payment coming through and being like, and scrambling to be like,
Right.
okay, like what am I doing for backups? Like Backup Buddy, okay, like I guess I'll try this. Like
Yeah.
I was kind
Wow.
of putting operations together like as our first clients were coming in.
Yeah. Wow.
And honestly, if I were to go back, I wouldn't do anything different. I
Yeah.
think it was kind of how it had to be. And I'm totally actually like not ashamed of it. I'm kind of proud of that. Like it was actually like, to me, it was a positive thing to, like, not everything's going to go super smoothly all
Sure.
the time. Like if you
Sure.
ever want to do anything, running a business or growing a business, like these are the kind of moments you have to like figure things out. And so, yeah. But in terms in general about imposter syndrome, usually I'm pretty centered around that stuff. I feel like it's almost a requirement to starting a business or an entrepreneurial journey to put yourself out there
Sure.
and to risk embarrassment, and almost more than risking embarrassment, it's like if you're not embarrassed
Right.
at some point, like you did, like
You haven't put yourself
that
out
doesn't
there
even
far
seem
enough
possible.
yet.
Yeah, it doesn't even seem like it's possible in my mind. So like,
Right. Sure.
in order, like in my mind, to grow a business, like I'm really proud of where WP Buffs is today, like super proud. But to get here, I don't know how much super special stuff we did. In my mind, it's really just like we went through like 1,000 challenges and we just overcame them all.
Yeah.
To me, that's the secret. It's like, keep going. And so to overcome challenges, like you're going to have embarrassing moments. So like, that's usually my advice to people who are like thinking about starting something. It's like, build it out in the open. Like let people give you feedback. You're going to get positive and negative feedback. Like enjoy it all, you know?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously, if you get like 100% negative feedback, like maybe something's wrong. But
Maybe something needs to change.
yeah, you may want to peek and take a look at some of that. But
Right.
there's always going to be some sort of embarrassing or negative attention on you. And honestly, like as WP Buffs has grown, some of that has grown as well. Not because we're not a well-run company, but there's always going to be someone out there who's like that one review that someone left because there was a small miscommunication support that's like 1-star review, and you're like, oh my God, like we're doomed. But like you're not, you know?
Yeah.
And so as long as I think you're focused in the right direction, I think like some of that imposter syndrome, some of that embarrassment, some of that, am I really the person to like do this?
Sure.
Like that's actually, I think it's necessary to point to like confront that and to like be comfortable being uncomfortable, because I mean I'll tell you to be honest, like I still feel a lot of that, you know, on a maybe a week that's not so great, which I've had a few of in the past, you know, few months. I've had you know, some challenges come up for myself personally and just for the business personally, and things we got to get better at, things we got to improve at, and hey, that's the name of the game, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So I did want to ask, there are a number of companies in the, you know, originally the WordPress maintenance space, moving into the website management space. There are a number of other companies that offer similar services, right?
Yeah.
What makes WP Buffs unique within that space? And I guess what I'm curious about is, were you intentional early on about saying, here's what these other companies are doing and here's what I can do to be different than what they're doing? Like, was there an intentional choice early on, and how has that needle moved over time?
I wish there had been a more intentional choice
early
on.
Yeah.
I think that I don't think for a long time in the company we had a big differentiator, like a unique value proposition, or like people call it like an unfair advantage. Like, what's your unfair advantage that makes you so, like, why would people go with you over other folks? And I think I didn't focus on a lot of that early on. I think because of kind of what we talked about, I was like, I see these other companies doing this. Let me get to there first. Like, let me prove that I can get there, and then I can think about, because this is a good business model, I can think about maybe differentiators later on. And I think actually I think that the differentiator for us came from some of that feedback from clients we were talking about. Because our white label program, I think, is a big differentiator. Not a lot of other not a lot of other maintenance or website support companies. One, I think, even have a white label program. And two, I just think our white label program is super well organized and really thorough. And like, we have a partner hub that gives people all sorts of resources to be able to sell more care plans to their clients. They get like free ebooks to like send to their clients that are fully white labeled. They have like how to add, care plans to your proposals that you build. Like truly a full hub of like how to work within our white label program that helps our white label program grow, but also helps them grow because our white label partners are making a profit on the care plans they sell as well. So it's a profit center for them. But we didn't start off doing white label. It wasn't even my idea. It wasn't even anybody's idea at WP Buffs. The reason we did it is because we were driving traffic to the website. And then, so what we were doing is we were driving traffic, and I was trying to get people to download our ebooks. And so I was sending a lot of people to our ebooks page. They'd download the ebooks, and then they'd hit a confirmation page, like wpbuffs.com/email-confirmed, right? They land on this page, like, thanks for subscribing. Here's maybe, like appreciate you. Here's maybe some other thing you might be interested in. Whatever. I don't even remember what was on that page. But we had a Hotjar poll popping up on that page that I added because I wanted to learn more about the people subscribing to our email address. And I asked a bunch of different kinds of questions. I was like cycling through questions, trying to learn, get feedback from people. And one of the questions I asked was, I forget exactly what the question was, but it was around like, what kind of websites are you working on? And the answers to that were like my own website, client sites, or both. Client sites and my own sites. And like 70% of people were answering either client sites or clients and my own sites. So the traffic I was driving, I wasn't really even thinking about like who they are. Are you like a WordPress power user, or are you a WordPress like agency? Like those are very different people. Turns out we were driving a lot of traffic from agencies and freelancers and people working on WordPress client sites. So I said like, well, these are not like the direct buyers of our care plans, unless maybe like we're managing a freelancer site. Like maybe there's, and then the white label program kind of came in as I was chatting with my teams. Like, oh, maybe we could do like we could manage sites for them. Like they could do it through us. We could like white label reports and like manage white label support. Oh, we could like hook their support email, like just forward it into Teamwork Desk and like add their logo and signature to the footer, and like we can email on behalf of them. And so that's how white label program came together. And so to kind of circle back to the differentiator, I think that's a big differentiator for us.
Absolutely.
One, in terms of just service offerings, but two, in terms of like growth and financials, because our white label partners their lifetime values are way bigger than our direct customers, because they come on with like 20, 30, 50 sites at a time instead of like 1, 2, or 3 sites, right? They churn at a much lower rate. They speak our language a little better, as opposed to like a direct client who may be like, what's a plugin? Like agencies are like, okay, how are we like growing the care plan core piece of the business, et cetera. They know the language, right? So in a lot of senses, I think that's a big differentiator for us, and it's allowed us to, I think, grow a little bit faster, probably significantly faster than website management company that just caters to direct clients. So definitely a big piece of that.
The white label piece strikes me as uniquely challenging when you get into the human element, right? So where you have a part of your service is actually live. Like, so my assumption is that if you have an agency that's a part of your white label program, that WP Buffs support folks are interacting directly with the agency's customers, right? And so they become the face of the agency to the agency's customer in that interaction, because from the end user's perspective, that support person, it works for the agency from their perspective. And that strikes me as uniquely challenging, is managing that human element where the support personnel has to be constantly cognizant of what is the agency I'm representing right now. And I'm just curious, like, are there things you do internally around training or around process to try and help your support folks I don't know, better understand the agencies that they're representing, better understand how to make sure that they represent those agencies well?
Yeah, it's a really good question for some other folks on my team who truly manage that piece of business. Nick is our COO, Dean, client success, head of client success. I mean, those two really have that piece buttoned up. I'll tell you that one of the biggest challenges for us about 2 years ago was like, we hit like 15 or so support people / engineering people, and it like really changed how 24/7 support worked. It was just one of those transition points. I was like, this is really tough to figure out, like, how does this work at like 20 or 30 people? I mean, Kinsta's what, 100 150 people, I don't know exactly how many, but hundreds ish of people. I mean, you've had these growing pains as well, absolutely. I'm sure. And so that was a big challenge for us, but Nick and Dean have done an excellent job of just not only managing the team, but managing like systems around stuff. So we do have certain aspects of how we do support, so that like if a ticket comes into a certain white label partner's help desk, if someone goes in to manage that ticket or answer that ticket, we have automatic like triggers that come up, so that in like a note is automatically created based on that white label partner in the ticketing system that says, hey, this is this white label partner. Just remember some notes. Here's like the style that they like to use. Here is it's this white label partner. Just remember, like, they don't do like, we don't want to do any custom development for this client because they just don't want to do that. Like, we talk with them, and so we do have some systems in place so that like triggers is what they're called in Teamwork Desk. So that when a ticket comes in, it's like an if this happens and that happens. If the ticket comes into this help desk, this note is added, and here's the content of that note. And so stuff like that has been really helpful, and just systems around that kind of stuff. Also, honestly, just around like hiring the right people. And again, huge credit to Nick and Dean, and like Nick, who's pretty much, he does all the engineering hires. Like we have monthly stand-ups, and I'm like, hey, nice to meet you. Right. Two new people. Like, I've never met you before, but like, hey, I'd love to chat with you. But Nick has gone through the whole hiring process, and like very few people have like left his team. So he's he's done an excellent job, like hiring the right people. And honestly, like and it's hard to do. It seems like it'd be easy to do with 24/7 support because you have the whole world as your place you can hire from. But when he has so many candidates coming through, to really hire the right people is an enormous challenge, but one he's been super, super focused on. So I give a lot of credit to Nick in that area. I wish I had some more like specific examples, but those are the ones like I know about. The rest I just kind of like, Nick's got it, he's got it. So
right. Yeah, it's funny. I had a concept of some of the challenges, and then you just tossed out there that one of the notes might be, we don't do custom development for this client, and all of a sudden, like, the complexity just went into 1,000 more pieces, where I'm sitting here going, not only do you have different clients, but they have different scope of support per client. Like, oh my goodness. So that's a real challenge. So
we'd really try very hard. One of our biggest strengths is we are highly systemized, and we don't offer a lot of different stuff to different folks.
Sure.
We used to earlier on in the white label program days, where we were kind of like a little less picky about people we brought on, and we were like, oh, you're gonna like pay us money? Okay, come on, you're good, you're good.
Whatever you want. But
like now, we have sales calls with folks. I think about them more as like educational calls, or we want to make sure people are a good fit. To me, sales calls, quote unquote, have turned more into like actually like vetting people on our end, because we realize like bad customers, or I don't even want to call them bad. I want to say
it's just not a good
clients
fit.
who are not a good fit for us. Exactly.
Yes, absolutely.
They're just going to be lower lifetime value. They're going to churn faster. We've realized this, and so setting those expectations early on is really important. And selecting like the white label partners who are going to work exactly within our scope, because we've been doing this for a while. We know what is going to work for us and what works for you, and they don't fight us on that, or they say like, that sounds good. I want to do it exactly how you're doing it. Let's rock and roll. Sure, come on in. But someone who's a little bit like doesn't quite fit in that, maybe they still want to come on with 20 sites, but they're just we know it's not going to work. Not because we couldn't tweak things for them, but because tweaking things is going to like mess up our strengths and our system, our strengths in systems, and being able to scale that. And that drips down into being able to like service all of our white label partners extremely well because they've come into our system as opposed to us going into their system. So that's something we really focus on. And it's actually been a little bit of a struggle in sales because matching those expectations is, I can't even imagine at Kinsta how it must be, because you guys are like much bigger scale. I'm like, how do you do that at 150 people? Like, even at like 30, 35 people, it's been like, this is hard to do cross-team collaboration, but that's a big focus. Like this quarter is like a huge like focus on like sales to operations as expectation setting. And we've always been pretty good at it, but if we want to scale it more, like we have to be exceptional at it. So that's a big focus. Yeah.
What's funny is I think that Kinsta, if you were to ask me or if you were to ask, our chief customer officer, Tom, we would give almost the exact same answer, right? Like almost the exact same set of challenges, almost the exact same answer. And it's funny when you said, that early on when an agency would approach you, you really would kind of adjust what you would do because this is something you were trying to get off the ground. And we went through those exact same growing pains where early on, really before I joined Kinsta in 2016, Kinsta was really launched in 2014. So when I joined, we already had a significant customer base and revenue and whatnot. But there were folks who had joined early on. And when Kinsta was first launched, I would refer to the early days as like a boutique hosting agency where it was like kind of whatever you want, we will set it up for you, right? And so then we moved forward and eventually we got to the point where we're like, all right, we're going to use containers, we're going to make this thing scalable. And there was some major challenges in moving between those two concepts. So I absolutely can empathize or relate to some of the challenges y'all have faced. So
totally. Can I give a quick shout out to Tom, because like Tom is awesome. I'm sure you know Tom very well, but and I'm not sure I'm saying his last name right. Tom Somborgi.
Somborgi,
Somborgi? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Tom is awesome. I've been talking with Tom for a long time. I just searched my email for like the first time I had a conversation with Tom, and it was March 11th, 2017. Tom emailed our team, and honestly, I've been emailing with Tom back and forth for the past like 3.5 years when I have questions or when I want to like pick someone's brain around stuff. Tom's been like a really like, we don't talk like super often, but he's just someone who I know if I email, like he'll email me back and like he wants the best for me, and I can like tell that. And so I just want to give a quick shout out to Tom. He's an awesome dude, and you're lucky to have him on your team, man. He's excellent.
Well, I appreciate that. And Tom is strong into partnerships, and so folks like WP Buffs. I mean, you guys are at the top of his priority list in terms of taking care of you guys.
I don't even think about Tom as like a partnership guy because he's so like, it almost is like he just wants to help me like get better and help everyone else get better, and it's almost like not even as much as about the partnership. We're like we're an affiliate for Kinsta, and like I know Kinsta like sends some customers our way and stuff, but it doesn't even like feel like that. It just feels like this is like a place where we can all get better, and like let's try and do that. And I always appreciated that about Tom, and honestly about Kinsta in general. I mean, y'all have like a great, it feels like your mission and value structure is very like it's cemented in, you know what I mean? And I always felt that coming from Kinsta. So
Well, I appreciate you saying that. We spend a lot of time thinking about missions and value and maintaining a cohesive team. So I appreciate that.
Totally.
All right. So I want to go back and ask a more specifically about your motivations in launching the business, because you've talked a little bit around the practical reality where you wanted to you're doing some freelancing and you saw this opportunity to move into a subscription model. But people start businesses for a lot of different reasons. Maybe it's purely, I need an income. Maybe they're really passionate about solving a specific problem. Maybe they want to start a business that enables them to live a certain kind of life. So I'm curious about your motivations, right? Was it purely, I need to make a living, or were there other reasons that pushed you into entrepreneurship?
I never really worked a job for someone else that I enjoyed tremendously. That's not to say there aren't places out there I'm sure I wouldn't have landed and had a good experience. There are a ton of companies. I'm sure if I found a job at Kinsta, I'd loved it, right? So there are companies out there for sure. But all the jobs I worked, I was like, I felt like I always got treated like a millennial.
Sure.
In the sense that, like, you don't know anything. Like,
Right.
I'm not going to put you
Yeah.
in charge of anything.
Right.
Like, go do these things. And, like, it only takes you 10 hours a week, but I'm not going to give you any more work because, like, I don't trust. You know, it's just like,
Yeah.
and I'm like I don't think I'm, like, super exceptional at anything, but, like, I can hold my own, you know, just give me some stuff to do. Like, I
Right.
want more responsibility. I want to do
Yeah.
stuff. I always felt like I got treated that way. It's also probably important to say, like, some of the work I was doing was federal government consulting.
Right. Oh, sure.
So there's definitely a, like, just in those, I was doing some work at the, like, Department of Defense, and, like, that was, like,
Right.
all the decisions just get, like, pushed up to, like, 10 people who, like, make all the decisions. And it's like, why is that person making a decision about, like, user
Right.
experience on the website? Like, I know about this. Why,
Right.
why is that person, like, making the decision? So
Yeah.
I think I just got frustrated in the sense that the jobs I worked in never really enjoyed, and never felt it wasn't even about enjoyment. It was just about, like, positive impact. It was like, I want to do something. And I wanted to come into the WordPress space. I knew that. And I think that sense of, like, I never had I think me not enjoying the jobs was a lot about my manager. Right, I'm sure you've read these statistics. It's like,
Sure.
yeah,
Right.
your manager
Yeah.
is so important in, like, job satisfaction. Like, does your manager care about you?
Yeah.
Do they care about your professional development? Do they
Right.
truly care about you? And I never had much of that before. I always just felt like I was a cog in a wheel. So, yeah, I felt like I wanted to go in a different direction and you know, in a sense, be my own boss.
Yeah.
And be able to, whether I succeeded or failed, have it be because of my decisions. And
Yeah.
that was freedom for me.
Right.
I didn't want to have my own boss. I didn't want to commute.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Sure.
there was a point where I was driving, like, 45 minutes each
Yeah.
way for, like, my job.
Right.
And that's not even, like, a lot. Some people do, like, an hour and a half each way. It's, like,
Right.
crazy. But to
Yeah,
me, I was
it's
like,
nuts.
no, yeah, I won't even say any more than that. I was just like,
Right.
no, that's stupid. Like, I don't want to commute. Like, why can't I work from home?
Right.
And so I started discovering this whole remote world and, like, indie hacker community and, like, places where, like, people just, like, did their own thing. And, like, maybe most of them didn't become billionaires, but, like, that was never important to me. I
Right.
just wanted to, like, sure, I'd like to make some money along the way, but, like,
Yeah.
what's more important is to, like, be able to support my family and support myself and, like, live a life I like. And that's
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
do that, you don't need billions of
Yeah.
dollars. You don't
Right.
need to be that unicorn that does that. So, yeah, that's why I kind of started my own thing, because I should also probably note that, like, I didn't have very many life responsibilities back then.
Sure.
And I also
Right.
do come from a pretty privileged background. And so the risk of starting my own business was very minimal. You know,
Yeah.
then I was just starting to date my now wife. You may be able to hear our 14-month-old, you know, screaming because he's hungry in the background a little bit. But
Yeah.
then we had just started dating. But, like, that was my relationship responsibility. It was just like, I had a girlfriend, and I didn't have any kids.
Right.
I had, you know, I come from, again, a pretty privileged background. So the risk financially was, like, if something was totally to go wrong, like, I'd be okay, you know? So the risk of doing it, for me, I was very fortunate and very lucky that that it didn't feel like a huge risk.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it kind of just made sense. And
Right.
I just enjoyed, like, I enjoyed working and tinkering, and, like, I got to really enjoy it. Like, oh, this is, like, there's a lot of, like, moving pieces and challenges here, and, like, but I can, like, do whatever I want to. I can, like, test
Right.
whatever I want to. Like,
Sure.
this is kind of fun. So I think that's what drew me into entrepreneurship. I never had the dream of, like, honestly, like, even being here, I never really thought, like, you know, I was going to have a team of, like, 40 people. Like, that didn't
Right.
really, never was really the thought in my mind. I was really more like, I want to try something myself and see where it goes. And looks like it's gotten here. So who knows where in the future, you know?
Yeah. So what I'm kind of hearing is that it was really a desire to have, I don't know, maybe captain of your own ship, or just, like, to have freedom in what you were going to work on, and in how you lived your life. But the second piece was that it was important to you that you felt like you were making a positive contribution. And that is something that WP Buffs has a reputation of within the WordPress community, is just as a company that is a positive force within the WordPress community. And so I wanted to give you the opportunity to speak a little bit to what are some of the things that WP Buffs does to try to be a force, a positive force in the community, and why is that important to you?
Yeah, I've started to actually really think more about this over the past 6 months or so.
Sure.
The past year maybe, because we've hit this point where we're one of the bigger companies in the WordPress space. We're not a big company by any means, but we hit $1 million annual revenue. Probably of all the companies out there doing WordPress work, we're on the larger side
for sure.
And so and we are pretty visible in the WordPress space. Most people have seen WP Buffs around somewhere, and that's pretty strategic. I've done a lot of work, and our team has done a lot of work to try and make that the case. But now that is the case, I've been doing a lot of thinking about how do we make sure, not just by chance but by strategic design, that we are putting good out there in the world, and leading by example. And I think now that we have a little bit more financial freedom, we're at the point now where we can solve a few more problems with money. Not everyone. Some things are just too expensive for us still, because we're not, again, a huge company. But there are some things that we can solve problems by just kind of throwing a little money at it. Yeah. But that also means, from my point of view, if we're at that point, we should be using that money for good as well. So we, donate a good percentage of our profits every month to a lot of different do-good organizations. Lawyers for Good Government is one, kind of outside the WordPress space. I'm getting the name wrong, I think, but a Small Orange. No, that's a hosting company. It's WP End Up, which is a WordPress organization that does good work in the WordPress space. And so, we try to give a good amount away to organizations just to continue to support the WordPress community. We try to organize more of our team to contribute back to WordPress. We're not quite at 5% for the future. We haven't quite gotten there yet, but at some point we'd love to be doing that, and continuing to support the growth of WordPress itself. Honestly, because we're also so visible, we just try to be a good company and have good values and missions. We just updated our mission statement, and for folks who don't know that, maybe hearing our mission will create other people's missions who want to do well. And our mission is that we want to create unforgettable experiences and positive impacts for every community that we interact with. And so we've got little fun Slack emojis for positive impact and unforgettable experience. So when people do that, we can give them credit for it and stuff.
Nice. I like that.
That's actually been super helpful. So quick tip for folks, we have them for our values too, all of our core values, so that we can give folks credit for it. But that's something we try to, I think that's one of the biggest impacts we can have is when people see one of the bigger companies in the WordPress space, how do they function? Are they getting bigger and kind of you know how it is, John, as companies grow, some of them become evil, right? It's remember Google took out don't be evil out of their terms of service. It's holy crap, that's not
just admitting
that's not good. And I actually, honestly, one of the reasons I've been admired Kinsta for so long is you continue to grow, but you continue to feel you haven't changed at all. You're still the company that wants to have the positive impact that everybody loves Kinsta, and so that's what I want to strive for as well. So in a sense, I'm kind of trying to follow, in your footsteps, but that I think is, you don't see that from a lot of companies. And I'm not here saying that we're perfect at all that, nor Kinsta, I'm sure you wouldn't say Kinsta's perfect at all that either, but you try every day to improve that. And that's something that's been top of mind for me, is just, we want to be a guiding light so that, the 10 other companies that come after us, they are expected to do the same, because you have to lead by example. If it's not us, who is it? Some of the other big companies out there, the Google we talked about, some, they get to the size and they just money takes them over. But because, hey, we're revenue funded, we fund ourselves, we don't answer to anybody. We have the option to try and be the best company we can from an ethical standpoint, from a do-good standpoint. And I think we have the responsibility to do that, because who else is going to do it? So why not us,
I really love that Slack reactions. idea or the emojis that you guys use in Slack. We actually just rewrote our values within the last 6-8 months.
Cool.
And there's a page that will go live on our website, or may have already gone live on our website by the time this podcast airs,
nice.
Where we describe those values. And one of the things we've been trying to think about is how do we keep them top of mind? And I can already tell you that your Slack emojis idea is going to be implemented.
Yes, dude. I think you should please steal that. And anybody listening, please steal that. I think one of the hardest parts about having a mission and having a value and keeping everybody so focused on that is how do you keep it top of mind on the day-to-day? Not just every 2 weeks when you do your feedback form, or every month when you have your one-on-one with your manager. How are your values going?
Right.
No. How do you get it infectious in the team, and how do you build a true culture around accomplishing those values? And that Slack thing is actually, it's a small thing, but it's so helpful.
I love it.
And so I think please steal that. I hope every company using Slack does that. I think it's a great idea.
Well, the whole thing with company values is that they're meaningless if they don't impact the way you work.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And so you have to keep them top of mind because we meant them when we wrote them, and we want them to be thrown in our face when we do something that doesn't align with those values. So internally, when we make a choice that doesn't align with those values, we want somebody to point out, this does not align with what you said you're about. Does this decision make sense? And if you're not keeping them top of mind, that's not going to happen. So
that makes it super easy. Actually, I don't mean to totally go off on a tangent about this, but I think it's a great thing to talk about. It makes it very easy for me as a manager to have a conversation with someone who I'm a direct report of mine and say hey, we didn't follow this value, because it's literally we make it so that they're easy to find. You just type in :value or :mission and all the stuff comes up, and you can say well, this didn't totally go exactly how we wanted, and then just type in value, lead by example. Maybe you didn't lead by example. And that really makes it it's not I'm not coming at you. It's just it's the the values, and we all told ourselves we're going to follow these values. So it actually, I think, makes it very easy to have conversations around values, even more difficult conversations, but also positive conversations around values and mission. And that's what it's all about. That gets it over weeks and months and years. You get that ingrained, because it's I know he's going to reply with lead by example. Oh, I should have led by example, right?
I
so
know
it
it's
really
coming.
Does help.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love it. All right. So as we wrap this conversation up, bring it in for a landing, I have 2 quick wrap-up questions for you. So first off, what is a resource you would recommend to listeners of this podcast? So whether that's a newsletter, a blog, or somebody to follow on Twitter, or a podcast, whatever. What's a resource you would recommend to our listeners?
It's a broad question. I feel like I have multiple responses per idea I'm having. So okay, if there are some of our cool WordPress resources from WP Buffs, I would actually say if you want to go check stuff out, WP Buffs, WPBuffs.com, there's a bunch of stuff over there. But I think the WP MRR community is really cool. And that podcast, I think, is if you're listening to this podcast and you want to listen to more WordPress content and you're Joe didn't totally suck here, maybe I want to listen to him talk a little bit more about topics like this and monthly recurring revenue and growing business, WP MRR WordPress podcast is a great resource for people. I've had, we've done 140 or so episodes at this point. So it's pretty well established. And every week I'm having conversations with people. It's honestly just my excuse to have awesome conversations with new people. And it's every time I get off a call, I'm wow, that must have been the best episode I've done, because that was totally enlightening. So that's awesome. That's a cool resource for folks. I'm also just thinking about more general life stuff.
Sure.
I'm a big I listen to podcasts pretty regularly. I would say if folks were at all interested by some of the more metric stuff we were talking about, or honestly just some of the revenue funded, growing your own business, not having to deal with a man, I'm going to do my own thing sort of conversations. The Indie Hackers community and podcast is a great resource for people. So it's just indiehackers.com. And I listen to their podcast pretty religiously, because I always I'm always scrambling for my notebook, like, oh my God,
Sure,
I got to write this down. Like, that's an amazing, just like totally offhanded thing that guy said, but that is everything, So
nice.
that's a great podcast. And also just like the MicroConf community. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but MicroConf is kind of like, it's a community and annual summit that I used to go to, not anymore.
Right.
Now the COVID's happening, right? But I will go back to once that's live, and that's an excellent resource for people if they want to really like find a good community of like-minded folks. Not a ton of WordPress people in there, but when I went to MicroConf like 3 years ago, there was like a WordPress meetup, and there were like 25 or 30 people that we all went out to dinner together.
Nice.
And it was hilarious. It was great. It was like, oh, WordPress, like, let's go.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And so that was a lot of fun. So MicroConf and Indie Hackers are two communities that I would definitely urge people to like, if you want to like be part of this, you got to be somewhat part of the community. You don't have to be like the super social person all the time, but you got to get someone involved in the community, learn from others, give back to others. Those are great places to do that, even if they're not WordPress specific.
Sure. Okay, nice. And final question for you. Where can our listeners either connect with you or learn more about WP Buffs?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter. So just at Joseph H. Howard.
Okay.
WP Buffs is just WPBuffs.com, WPMRR, WordPress monthly recurring revenue, at WPMRR.com. We got a bunch of stuff up. Like, you can find links in the footers to all the other stuff, but those are the places that we kind of talked about today. So if you're interested at all, feel free to check out sites. I'm on Twitter, although I'm not like super active. Like, I don't have any social media installed on my phone, so if you tweet at me, like, I'm not going to see it probably for a couple of days because I'm like pretty bad. Like, I'm strategically selfishly bad at social media, so that I don't have to check it.
Right.
But I am on there, and if you hit me up, if you tweet at me, like, I'm sure I'll reply at some point. So I'm there if you want to find me.
Perfect. Well, Joe, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to hang out with me today.
You're very welcome. And one last thing I would like to say, if you wouldn't mind. This is a new-ish podcast, so folks should totally go and give a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. It's not iTunes anymore. I've been saying iTunes on my podcast, give it a read, but it's not. It's Apple Podcast. That helps the show get found, and it helps John want to do more episodes.
That's right.
He's going to smile when he sees those reviews. So I just like to give a little review shout-out for folks. It really just takes a couple minutes. It takes like 1 minute, really. Like star review, little comment. John's awesome. Joe's awesome. Both of you are awesome. Thanks. And leave the review. And that's it. So go ahead and do that.
Well, and I appreciate Joe's recommendation. That is all for today's podcast. You can access the episode show notes at kinsta.com/podcast. That's KINSTA.com/podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe to Reverse Engineered. And as Joe suggested, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or the platform you're listening on right now. See you next time.